Once upon a time, there was a city called Zaarstan. The city appeared desolate and barren, with thorny trees scattered all around and thorny bushes spreading across the land. This area was as vast as a large city. Surrounding the city was a high wall made of ancient bricks, so old that it had crumbled in several places. In the broken spots, terrifying spider webs were formed. The city was full of ruins, old, broken houses, where snakes, scorpions, and other strange and dangerous creatures roamed constantly. There was not a single person living in this entire city. The atmosphere was so terrifying that even the bravest of men during the day would fear entering it. At night, glowing lights would move all around the city, and eerie laughter and screams could be heard, echoing far beyond Zaarstan, reaching nearby cities and terrifying their people. It was widely known that Zaarstan was a city of evil spirits. At first, a few brave men tried to enter, but they ran out screaming, their bodies covered in blood, wounded all over, and terrified. They died soon after, screaming and writhing in pain. After that, no one dared to go near the city. Zaarstan was located in the Roman Empire, and rumors of the haunted city spread throughout the land. Every caravan that passed by would tell new and terrifying stories about Zaarstan. Slowly, the people of Rome came to know of it, and it became known as the City of Evil Spirits. The ruler of Rome was King Zaarstan, a very pious and kind-hearted man, always ready to ease the suffering of his people. His subjects considered him their greatest ally, and they were extremely happy with his reign. King Gulfam always made sure that no one in his kingdom faced any harm. If any of his subordinates caused even the slightest discomfort to anyone, King Gulfam would punish them so severely that no one would ever dare to harm the people again. Like the king, his officials also served the people, considering it their duty to alleviate any suffering. King Gulfam held daily courts, where the doors were open to everyone, and there were no guards. Every person in the kingdom was free to come and present their grievances. However, since no one had any complaints, no one ever came. On this particular day, King Gulfam was sitting in the open court, attending to matters of the state when, suddenly, a woman entered, crying and wailing, shouting for justice. Everyone in the court was shocked. They were all wondering who had harmed this woman, knowing that whoever had caused her pain, the king, realizing the seriousness of the situation, knew that the person who had caused this harm would not escape his judgment. He stared at the woman in astonishment, who appeared to be from a wealthy family based on her attire. "What's the matter? Who has caused you harm?" the king asked, addressing the woman, who was crying profusely. "Your Majesty, I am the widow of a nobleman who was killed while fighting in battle. His name was Arshad, Your Majesty." "Perhaps you remember him," the woman said, weeping. Yes, I remember well. I also recall that after Arshad's death, I provided a stipend for his widow and children, so that they would not suffer." "What is it? Have you not been receiving it?" the king asked. "No, Your Majesty. The stipend has been given to us regularly, and thanks to your generosity and kindness, we have not faced any hardship after the death of Amir Arshad. My daughter and I have been living a good life. However, last evening, an old woman came to our house. She said she was ill, and that the doctor had asked her to bring a very large bottle. Since she did not have a large one, she came to ask us for it. We had a large, very clear glass bottle, so I told my daughter to give it to the old woman so that she could get medicine from the doctor. When my daughter, Najma, brought the bottle, the old woman was delighted. She asked Najma to wash it, and when Najma did, she opened the bottle's lid. Suddenly, she grabbed Najma by the neck and blew on her with great force. In an instant, Najma began to shrink. Before we knew it, she had become so small that the old woman easily lifted her and placed her into the bottle, closing the lid tightly. I don't know what else the old woman did, but Najma, along with the servants who were present, turned into lifeless statues. We couldn't make a sound. The old woman calmly placed Najma into the bottle and closed the lid. Once she did, her appearance changed. She turned into a terrifying evil spirit, cackling as she held the bottle in both hands and flew off into the air, disappearing. After her disappearance, we regained our senses and immediately began searching for Najma, but she was nowhere to be found. I went to a fortune-teller, who told me that the old woman was from Zaarstan and was the daughter of the king of Zaarstan. She is extremely cruel. Every month, on the 14th night, she brings a young girl and traps her in the bottle just like she did with Najma. The girl remains in the bottle until the next 14th night, when the evil spirit princess opens it, releases the girl, and cuts her throat. The blood that pours from the girl's neck is collected in the bottle, and the spirit drinks it until the next 14th night, when the cycle repeats. Since no one can enter Zaarstan, no one can rescue Najma from the clutches of the evil spirit, the woman explained, her voice filled with despair. I was hopeless and crying when I came to you with this plea. You are the king of Rome, and Zaarstan is part of your kingdom. You are just and merciful. Please, free my daughter, Najma, from the evil spirit's grasp, she continued, detailing the horrifying story. The king and the courtiers were stunned upon hearing the tale. The king knew that no one could enter Zaarstan, so helping the woman seemed impossible. However, the king spoke resolutely. Najma is not just your daughter. She is also the widow of Amir Arshad, and she is like a daughter to us. Every girl in our kingdom is our daughter. I will surely free Najma from the evil spirit's grip, even if it means sacrificing my own life. The entire court was once again shocked by his determination. I will rescue Najma from the evil spirit's clutches, said Prince Kashif, the king's only son, standing up. But, Your Majesty, no human can enter Zaarstan. How can Najma be freed? Prince Kashif asked, his youthful emotions showing. We don't want our prince to be killed by the evil spirit. God has blessed humans with intelligence and great abilities. If a person truly desires something, they can accomplish what seems impossible, the Prime Minister standing up reassured. So, do not worry. I will ensure that Najma is freed from the evil spirit's hold. You must not be emotional, Prince Kashif. Fighting the evil spirit cannot be done out of passion alone. We must think carefully and act with strategy. Najma's freedom is crucial, but we must plan this wisely, the king advised, trying to calm the young prince. I understand, Your Majesty, said the woman, but I cannot bear to risk the life of Prince Kashif for the sake of my daughter. I will now be patient with my daughter, Najma's mother said, resigned to her fate. No, now it is our duty to free Najma from the clutches of the evil spirit, and not only free her, but also eliminate the evil spirit. Otherwise, she will continue to abduct our daughters, the king declared firmly. He then turned to the elderly royal astrologer seated on the side. "Astrologer, you are the one who can calculate the truth. Tell us the real story, and how Najma can be freed from this evil spirit." The elderly astrologer spoke calmly. "Your Majesty, I have already calculated everything. What the widow of Amir Arshad has told you is absolutely true, and Prime Minister's words are also correct. No one can enter Zaarstan. Even if someone did, they would not survive. However, there is only one way to free Najma from the evil spirit's grip. That way is for someone to reach the evil spirit at the exact moment she opens the bottle on the 14th night, preparing to kill Najma. At that moment, all of the spirit's attention will be focused on the bottle. If the hair on the evil spirit princess's head is severed and burned, the evil spirit will be reduced to ashes. This will free Najma and destroy the evil spirit. But, royal astrologer, you yourself are saying that no one can enter Zaarstan. How can anyone reach her at the right time?" the king asked, bewildered. "Yes, your Majesty. My calculations show that only one person can enter Zaarstan. The one who possesses the eye of the black cat of Patal. Because the one who holds the eye of the black cat of Patal is not affected by the terror of evil spirits and can easily enter Zaarstan. And even more strangely, the evil spirits cannot see that person as long as the eye of the black cat remains in their possession," the astrologer explained in detail. "But I must also tell you that if anyone enters Zaarstan with a sword, the evil spirits will be able to see it, and they will surround and kill that person. The eye of the black cat of Patal. What are you saying, royal astrologer? Where can we find this cat?" the king asked in surprise. "The black cat of Patal resides in Patal, the deepest part of the earth, where the land ends," the astrologer replied. "But how can anyone reach Patal?" the king inquired. "Your Majesty, there is a small island in the middle of the Black Sea, called Patal Island. In the center of the island, there is a cave that leads directly to Patal. If someone enters the cave, they can easily reach Patal. However, I must warn you that the island is filled with terrifying beasts, and the cave is home to many dangerous creatures, which must be confronted. Once a person reaches Patal, they will find a large red room. Inside this room, there is a statue of a royal cat with a red eye in its forehead. The eye can be easily extracted with the tip of a sword," the royal astrologer explained in detail. "I am ready, your Majesty." "Please give me permission," said Prince Kashif, standing up, filled with determination. Prince Kashif stood up and said, "All right, you have permission. I am confident that with your bravery you will free Najma and also eliminate this evil spirit." The king granted his only son permission for this perilous journey, and all the courtiers were astonished by the king's courage and resolve. "Your Majesty," the Prime Minister stood up once again to speak. "We understand, Prime Minister, what you wish to say. We simply want to express that since the prince is our only heir, and this mission is extremely dangerous, perhaps someone else could be sent in his place, with rewards to encourage them." The king spoke firmly, his tone sharp. "Yes, your Majesty, that's exactly what I wanted to suggest," the Prime Minister replied, bowing his head. "Prince Kashif is the heir, and we do not wish for him to be harmed." "Your concern is noted, Prime Minister, but protecting our heir is our first duty, and we cannot ignore that. If Prince Kashif weren't here, I, despite my age, would have gone myself, the king countered. Moreover, remember that Najma is also the only daughter of that woman. Anyway, I have granted permission, so no further arguments will be entertained, the king concluded, putting an end to the conversation. With the king's approval, Prince Kashif returned to his palace. He prepared for the journey, packed his belongings, and mounted his horse to head towards the sea. Near the shore, the sailors' huts stood. The prince approached an elderly sailor who had once been his swimming instructor. The elderly sailor was astonished to see the prince so suddenly, but listened attentively as Kashif explained the mission. I know the island, Your Highness, but it's far. It would take us many years to reach by boat. However, if the princess fish helps us, she can take us there in a day, the old sailor said. The princess fish? Where do we find her, and how will she help us? Prince Kashif asked in surprise. Follow me, said the old sailor, and he led the prince along the coastline. After a while, he stopped, knelt on the sand, and began muttering words as he sprinkled sand into the sea. Moments later, a huge golden fish emerged from the water. I know, old sailor, why you have called me. Since the prince seeks to fulfill a noble purpose, we will help him, the fish said in a human voice. Tell the prince to enter my mouth, and he will be unharmed. Thank you, Princess Fish. We will be forever grateful for your help, Prince Kashif said, filled with gratitude. Prince Kashif, feeling elated, entered the mouth of the golden fish as it opened its cavernous mouth. Once inside, the fish sealed its mouth, and the prince sat quietly in the dark, the gentle rocking motions of the fish making him fall into a deep sleep. The journey felt timeless until a sudden jolt awakened him. The fish's mouth was open, signaling they had arrived at the island. The prince quickly exited the fish's mouth and found himself on the island. The fish's voice echoed in his mind. On the island, you will find a tree with 2 peaks. Go to it and say, I was sent by the Princess Fish. Help me. When you do, a red fruit will fall from the tree. Eat it, and you will become invisible to the predators and creatures of this island. With that, you can safely reach the depths of Patal. When you return, stand here, call my name, and I will take you back. May Allah bless you in your journey. Prince Kashif thanked the Princess Fish in his heart, then hurried toward the center of the island. Soon, he found the 2-peaked tree as described. Following the fish's instructions, he called out to the tree, and immediately a large red fruit, about the size of a berry, fell from its branches. The prince swiftly ate it, and as he did, a strange sensation washed over him. To his astonishment, he found that the terrifying beasts of the island, who roamed freely, paid him no heed. It was as though they couldn't see or smell him. He continued forward with ease, his heart pounding as he realized the significance of the red fruit. If he had not eaten it, the terrifying creatures would have torn him apart before he could even attempt to reach the cave. But now, as he walked undisturbed, he felt confident in his path. Eventually, he reached the entrance of a large cave, just as the royal astrologer had described. Inside, countless dangers lurked: scorpions, snakes, terrifying spiders, and man-eating ants. But they ignored him completely. Calmly, he walked through the cave, occasionally stopping to rest his back against the cool stone walls. After what felt like an eternity, he finally arrived in Patal. The sight that greeted him was a large, red-colored room with an open door. It seemed almost unbelievable that anyone could make it this far, for no one would expect a living person to survive such a journey. The prince steeled himself, knowing this was only the beginning of his mission to save Najma and defeat the evil spirit. When Prince Kashif entered the room, he saw a large statue of a completely black cat with a deep red eye-like stone embedded in its forehead. The prince quickly drew his sword and used the point to pry the eye out of the cat's statue. With the eye in hand, he turned around and hurriedly climbed back up the cave. He wanted to get out of the cave as quickly as possible. Since he had eaten the red fruit from the tree earlier, no creature could see him. Finally, he made his way out of the cave. After exiting, he climbed a tree and rested for a while because he was extremely tired from his continuous journey. Once he had regained some strength, he climbed down from the tree and made his way back towards the sea. Once again, no creature came near him, and he walked peacefully toward the shore. When he reached the beach, he called out to the golden fish, which appeared overjoyed to see the prince safe. It opened its mouth, and the prince climbed inside, once again feeling the motion of the fish and drifting into sleep. After a sudden jolt, his sleep was interrupted, and he found that he had arrived back at the shore. He stepped out of the fish's mouth, thanked it, and made his way back to his old mentor, the fisherman. The fisherman was very happy to see him safe and congratulated him. The prince thanked him as well. His horse, which had been waiting, was still there. He mounted the horse and began his journey toward Zaarstan. It took him quite some time, but eventually he arrived in Zaarstan. He discovered that it had taken him a month to obtain the eye of the black cat from the underworld and make it to Zaarstan. Tonight was also the 14th night. As the night fell, he tied his sword to his horse and, empty-handed, made his way toward the broken wall of Zaarstan. With the eye of the black cat in the crown on his head, he was confident that the spirits would not be able to see him. As he entered through the broken section of the wall, he was amazed to see that the area was filled with terrifying spirits wandering around, as if they had always belonged there. At first, the prince was startled by their horrifying appearance, but his fear soon dissipated. He continued forward, with the spirits completely ignoring him. He hadn't walked far when he heard loud, eerie laughter coming from the distance. He looked ahead and saw a terrifying spirit holding a large bottle in a wide open field. Inside the bottle, a beautiful girl was trapped, and the spirit was laughing as it tried to open the bottle. Since the prince was still quite a distance away, he began running urgently, hoping to reach the spirit before the bottle was opened. Running swiftly, he reached the spirit, who was still busy trying to open the bottle. The spirit didn't even notice the prince approaching. However, the spirit was so tall that the prince couldn't reach her head to pull her hair. In a moment of panic, the prince quickly retreated and ran back at full speed toward the bottle. As he neared, he jumped high, and his hand grabbed the neck of the bottle. He hung on to it for a moment, then swiftly climbed up the spirit's arm, which was holding the bottle. "What's this? Who's crawling on my hand?" the spirit exclaimed in surprise. But since she couldn't see the prince, she continued trying to open the bottle. The prince, moving with lightning speed, climbed up her arm and reached her neck. In one swift motion, he grabbed her hair and yanked it hard. The spirit shrieked in agony, but the prince managed to tear a handful of her hair, thick as a rope, in just a few pulls. He quickly jumped off, holding the hair tightly in his hand. "My hair! My hair!" The spirit screamed as she looked down and saw the hair in the prince's hands. She crouched down to grab it, but the prince ran off with it. Once he was a safe distance away, the prince took out 2 pieces of stone from his pocket and rubbed them together, creating a spark. The spark ignited the hair, setting it on fire. As the spirit bent to retrieve her hair, she screamed and recoiled, then began running wildly through the field. The fire spread across the hair, and with it, the flames engulfed her body. The prince stood calmly, watching, as the fire not only consumed the spirit's body, but also spread to all the other spirits in Zaarstan. As the fire continued to burn, the entire city echoed with the screams of the spirits, but the prince remained untouched, safe from their sight due to the eye of the black cat from the underworld. Within moments, the hair turned to ash, and with it, the spirit princess and all the spirits of Zaarstan were burned to nothing. The entire city was now free from their torment. However, the bottle remained lying on the ground. The prince picked up a heavy stone and smashed it against the bottle. As soon as the bottle shattered, Najma returned to her true form. Since the prince was visible to her now, and she had witnessed the entire ordeal from inside the bottle, she approached him and thanked him sincerely. The prince, in turn, shared the entire story of his journey with her. He was deeply impressed by her bravery, strength, and wisdom, and he was happy to have helped her. The prince took Najma with him, and, mounted on his horse, they set off toward the city. After a long journey, they finally reached the prince's kingdom. When Najma's mother heard the news of her daughter's safe return, she was overjoyed. The king, too, was incredibly pleased with his son's bravery. Celebrations spread throughout the entire kingdom. The king met Najma, and, after consulting with her mother, he announced the marriage between Prince Kashif and Najma. The entire kingdom erupted in joy, and for 7 days, grand festivities took place in celebration. Eventually, Prince Kashif and Najma were married, and they began living happily ever after. Meanwhile, in a humble village, the poor farmer and his wife continued to live their modest life, raising the 7 children they had adopted, teaching them love and kindness.